Hello, I'm Bonnie Houck, and this session is Literacy Unleashed, Guiding Effective Professional Learning. It's an extension and enhancement, an update of the book published in 2016, Literacy Unleashed, Fostering Excellent Reading Instruction Through Classroom Visits. Um, my name is obviously Bonnie Houck. While I am sharing a little bit about me, I would love it if you would enter into the chat a little bit about yourself, your name, if you're an administrator, teacher, coach, the level that you serve, anything else you'd like to share, that would be great. I've been an educator for over 30 years, started as an elementary school teacher and moved into secondary ELA and social studies. Throughout my first few years of teaching, I realized that there were a lot of students who really had some strong literacy needs and some significant struggles in either learning to read in the early years or just managing to read all the voluminous things that we expect from secondary learners. So I went back, earned my master's degree and an ed specialist in literacy, and began a career change. And I became a literacy coach, then a district coordinator, the state reading specialist for Minnesota, which was quite a surprise and a huge and wonderful learning curve. I served as a university professor at several universities and was the University of Minnesota's reading coordinator for their master's program. In addition to that work in the universities, I also served as a consultant for the last 10 years in about, I've probably been in 1,000 classrooms, a couple thousand classrooms, and I supported about 40 school districts in variant ways. And my partner in doing some of this work, Sandy Novak, who is my co-author, she and I published through ASCD and did a few things with them, and I became a faculty member. I'm from a family of teachers. My husband is a middle school technology teacher, former USA champion of the world Greco-Roman wrestler. So he's a second career teacher, very passionate. My daughter and my son-in-law are high school teachers. So we are a family of educators, and I learn a lot from them, and they keep me humble when I get ideas and tell me, no, that's not going to work. And so I'm excited to look in the chat and learn more about you. We have some session resources, and you have a handout that was uploaded, but I've prepared a website for you, and I will put the links in the chat. I believe they're also on the handout. You'll get a lot more resources this way, and so I thought this is a little bit more nimble way for you to get the resources. As I talk through, I'll kind of share with you where these are located in the website. You can also click on it, have it open, and navigate back and forth between the presentation and the Google site. So I hope you like it and find it useful. I will remind that there's a lot of things in this site that are supporting the work that we're doing today and not for duplication outside of your personal application of the learning. So our learning targets, our session goals, we have three basically. To become able to use the literacy classroom visit model, a collection of tools that will help you collect data to know more about the needs of your teachers, how to follow the framework for professional learning, and then monitor the implementation of that learning using variant tools that are provided for you today. So before I get into the nitty-gritty, I want to remind us of the research that says literacy is more than just the things that kids learn in reading class or in English or ELA classes. It is embedded in all the instruction that we do. The ability to read, write, listen, speak, think. Those are critical, and they're also equity issues because they truly promote access and arm us against oppression. In a wonderful book by Kelly Gallagher, he really outlines what it's like to be illiterate and the struggles in the world that come as a result of that, or even partially literate. So we want to make sure that our students have what they need to be successful in life and also motivated to learn and to become self-educated. Our data from NAEP and other national data sources have said, we've been either stagnant or declining in reading, depending on which data you look at. And the most recent data is we're on the decline. And I think part of that is text has changed. So we used to think text as print, books and articles and such. But we have to broaden our definition to video, online, digital, ebook, also audio, visual things, posters, charts, anything that we have to interact with to make meaning is text. And so it doesn't matter what you're teaching, disciplinary literacy has to be integrated. And so we want to move beyond the assumption of that erroneous statement that in K3 kids are learning to read and in 412 they're reading to learn, which is a myth. We are always learning to read and we are always reading to learn. And so we want to make sure that we're equipping our students with what they need to be lifelong, skillful, interactive people who can make sense of their world. I also wanted to point us towards the importance of professional learning. And teachers come out of their undergraduate program as generalists. They have a lot of knowledge and it's a mile wide and an inch deep. And then they have their areas that they were excited about that they went deeper. We really want to make sure that we provide ongoing job-embedded professional development. Learning Forward and ASCD and other professional organizations have encouraged us that it really needs to be active and collaborative and connected to what the teaching involves. And leaders need to coach, support, collect data about that implementation and make sure the teachers have the resources to actually marinate in the learning and implement it into the classroom so that students learn. There's a little bit of research out there that says in order for our PD to affect student learning, we need to invest 50 hours and then we'll see fruit born from that investment. So this is the framework for professional learning that supports the literacy classroom visit model. And you'll notice along the bottom, you'll see the literacy classroom visit data collection system. So we've got classroom visits, enhanced LCVs, teacher feedback, and survey. And so that's the supportive underpinning. Then in the middle section, you'll see an adult version of the gradual release of responsibility that was updated by Fisher and Fry in the last 10 years, but it actually comes from 50, 60 years of psychological and educational research. It was captured in a model, I do, you do, we do by Pearson and Gallagher in the 80s, and Fisher and Fry updated it because in the 21st century, we realized that the collaborative piece where students or adults talk about what they've learned, solidify what they've learned, look at data or their own work and share, that was missing. So we moved into I do, you do it together, you do it by yourself, to shift the ownership of learning. So we want the teachers to own their PD learning. So we construct the release of PD just as we would for a student around these modalities of they get some shared learning with explicit instruction, moving into guided practice and collaboration, application in the classroom, kind of that I go and I try it in my classroom, I talk to my grade level team, I bring student work data and lesson plan data to my PLCs, reflect back on my instruction. What did I learn? What did I change? What effect did it have on the students? And then while that's going on, the leaders are going into classrooms with an enhanced LCV, which I'll explain further, looking for the specific elements of the professional development, then bringing it back and looking at the next phase of PD. What do we need to reteach? What resources are needed? Or can we move on to the next level? So I'd like it if you would just take a moment and reflect, and you can do a self-reflection or you can reflect and put ideas into the chat. But think about the literacy needs of the students you serve. What's lacking? What do you know are the strengths of your system, the weaknesses of your system? Or are there things you don't know? When you've had opportunities for PD in the last 5 to 10 years, how many of those experiences really addressed literacy development? And then does your school or district have a defined framework for the supportive implementation of professional learning? Is it job embedded? Is it ongoing? Is it aligned? Or is it fun little chunks in a smorgasbord of PD based on interest? So reflect on that for a few minutes. Our next area of focus also has a dedicated website page. We're going to look at the toolkit, and the Literacy Classroom Visit model has quite a number of tools. The ones I'm sharing with you today are really on paper, but it's easy to switch them into a technological format. I've used Google Survey as an instructional observational data collection tool. But when teachers and leaders are first learning to use the tools, we find it really is more helpful for them to use paper instruments. And so in the toolkit, uh, there's two important pieces for setting the foundation and benchmarking your data. You want to visit every single classroom using the LCV foundational instrument, and you also want to survey teachers. The elements on the survey and the components of the look-fors of the foundational instrument are basically the same. So we're framing in the survey to teachers, do you know about this? And do you implement it in the classroom, and how often? And what we found is sometimes teachers have a real keen awareness of, yeah, I know this, but I'm not doing it in my classroom. Or I know this and I'm doing it in my classroom, but when we go in to visit, we don't see evidence of it. And so there's a disconnect between knowledge and implementation. So we have some tools that will help us get at that. The enhanced LCV is done after professional development is provided, and we give teachers a couple of weeks to collaborate and implement and reflect and kind of collect some data. And we go in to see with a modified instrument that unpacks the elements of the PD to go in and see what's bearing fruit in the classroom, analyze that data, bring it back to the teachers, get some feedback, and find out, did you not have enough time in the PD? Did you not have enough practice to implement it? Do you not have the resource to support it? So it creates this ongoing loop of communication. Before we even go into a classroom, we have a staff meeting and we share the tools that I outlined here. A one-page document that explains what literacy classroom visits are and what they aren't. They are not evaluative. They're a way of collecting data patterns so that we can plan PD and resource allocation. The comprehensive literacy instructional framework, that outlines the basics of K6 or K8 ELA instruction. And I have other frameworks for secondary content, etc. But for the sake of time, we're going to keep it minimal here. And then I met with a group of 8 professional literacy researchers and knowledgeable people in our state a few years back. And I said, if we could give teachers a one-page visual so they would know exactly what absolutely had to be done during the reading block of the ELA instructional delivery, what do they have to make sure they do? What do they have to make sure the students do? Because even though research says we need 120 to 150 minutes of language arts instruction, and 90 to 120 of those need to be reading in the elementary level, teachers don't often have that. So this document kind of helps them narrow it down. It's also aligned to the foundational instrument. When we go into a classroom, we're only in there for a short period of time. And it is similar to walkthroughs, but here's how it's different. We're visiting. It's a partnership. We're not looking at that individual teacher. We're getting the gist of the big space. What's the culture like? What's the instruction like across the school, across the grade levels? Where are we having pockets of excellence? Where are there pockets of needs? And what is the need related to resources or professional development? Because the data we collect really tells the story of the literacy culture, instructional practices, and student learning in the building. When we have a training session to get leaders ready to do classroom visits, often a district will commit and they will say, we're doing this pre-K-12, we're doing this pre-K-6, we're doing this K-4, whatever their model is. The principals and the literacy coaches get some upfront training. And then we go in, and this is I'm going to show you a video of a practice data collection day in a district. One of the principals had been enacting the classroom visit model for a year prior, then brought all the other principals together to our principals association, where I was doing a 4-day workshop for the last 10 years. So they came to that training, and then I came to the school, and in the school, we did a practice round. We went in every classroom. And so you'll get to see what that looks like. So as you're watching this, I would like you to think about how this is similar or different from other walkthrough processes that you may have done in the past.
And Nancy was nice enough to host a meeting today with our purpose being that we're going to try to learn from each other after we do some classroom visits. I thought before we go and do a visit, it might be great to look through some of the materials. So in front of you on a clipboard, you should have the balanced literacy component of, that we're going to use for all the classrooms.
Then we'll set out in 2 teams, about 3 or 4 people each. And Meg will be in one group and I will be in the other, and we will take you to our team areas. And in the team areas, there's various grade levels.
After the team has been guided through the process, they are ready to visit the first classroom.
What is this special? Why does this very one?
Once the team has finished gathering data from the first classroom, they return to the meeting space to calibrate their observations of the look-fors.
All right, so we had our calibration visit. Let's talk about the first section, classroom climate and culture.
Well, what I noticed is the learning target was posted on the board. The one I was specifically looking at was they're able to ask questions before, during, and after reading. However, there wasn't a performance criteria as to what types of questions we want students to be asking.
After this initial calibration, the team has a deeper understanding of the look-fors and returns to classrooms. When finished, they return to talk about common patterns and next steps.
Well, we've all done multiple visits across multiple grade levels. You could take the next 5 minutes to reflect on what you've seen across the board for whole group, small group, independent reading, classroom climate, learning target, and method, and some maybe try to find 2 observations in each of those areas.
When the team has had time to personally reflect upon their observations, the members are ready to give feedback to the hosting principal and her leadership team.
So one of the observations I made, that there was a lot of small group and independent work going on. I didn't observe whole group instruction. So a question I might have is, how is the whole group instruction being used effectively to support small group and independent reading?
One of the observations that I have is that I noticed that you had a real mix of level libraries. So the question I would ask is, have you discussed what constitutes a really strong level of library, and have you discussed the role of the amount of nonfiction and fiction? And some students did have access to books that were at their appropriate level, but I couldn't tell from what was in the room if you had enough, for how long that would go and what the selection was. But in terms of a summary message you want to give to, because we're going to wonder, we walked through their classrooms, what they saw, there were a lot of real positives. What's going to be your message to your staff, Nancy?
Before the meeting ends, the team talks about the literacy classroom visit process, noting things that worked well and ideas for improvement.
You know, we've been doing walkthroughs as principals for a very long time, but they've been more surface. They didn't elicit the kind of conversation we've had, and that is, I think, the part that we were missing. So this has really given us like a format that we can use to talk about it.
So then the data that I'm collecting is valuable, it's valid, it's not made up, and being able to use the data that I collect along with the teacher survey and integrate those together to develop professional development opportunities for staff, I think is a great process.
So as you noticed in the video, these principals and leaders really spent the time to calibrate and align the work that they're doing so that whatever goes on at one of the 6 elementary schools in the district is practiced across the district. So they can not only collect data in their own school, it can be collected across the district, and it can be analyzed in different ways. What's going on district-wide, what's going on district primary, what's going on district intermediate, what's going on across the entire kindergarten team, and to start drilling down and looking at data and disaggregating it differently. So it provides a lot of opportunity for learning and growth. When you get the data back, and again, you can do this electronically, but we find when teachers and principals are learning, it really helps for them to have a school-wide form, which is available to you on the website, It's got all of the elements for the classroom visit instrument on the left, and then each of the columns to the right represent a classroom. And we can see the critical mass of what we saw, and we can see where there aren't patterns of success, or it's not happening, or we didn't see it in the classroom. So one of the things to remember is we might be visiting classrooms for a 4-hour stretch. So we're going to see a variety of whole group, small group, student-led, independent reading, independent application activities during the ELA teaching time. And so what we're looking for is a balance of whole group, small group, and independent opportunities across the school. If we only saw on these data, so if you look in that center column where it says developing a balance of instructional delivery, it says 6 out of 18 classrooms were doing whole group, 7 were doing small group, 5 were doing independent reading and application. That's a pretty good balance. If we had seen 18 out of 18 doing whole group, then we would be looking at a staff that believed the kids learned best when the teacher was speaking. And so we can start to learn as we collect the data over time, what are the belief systems of the teachers? What is the practices of the teachers? How does the classroom operate? Where are the commonalities and successes? And what do we need to look for? So from this work, we identified there were 3 areas of need we wanted to focus the PD. Some whole group around engagement, some learning targets around success criteria, and that independent reading and conferring piece. We also noticed that the teachers didn't have enough instructional texts in their classroom library, and there was a huge lack of informational nonfiction texts available for the students. So this is the very first time, our walk away. Then we start planning PD. Based on that data, we plan our initial PD session and we say, okay, what are we going to introduce as that whole group explicit instruction and modeling to get everybody started with a nugget? Now, maybe we only have an hour, maybe we have a 2-hour late start, maybe we have a half day of PD. So we have to determine, again, we don't want to spend the whole time speaking to them. We want to give them time to collaborate and to reflect. And so if you look across, we've got that whole group focused instruction piece, the guided practice piece, the independent learning and application, coming back again with student work and lesson data. And then while that's going on, leadership or coaches are going into classrooms, collecting data, meeting with grade level teams, having conversations with the PLC group. And then that data helps inform the next round of PD. Okay, so now we're going to listen to another group of leaders. This is another school district who went about doing things a little bit differently. But again, they worked as a team, and every school in the district was working on data collection and the development of professional development across a 5-year commitment. As you're watching this video, I would like you to think about how they prepared for the data collection, what they did to ensure the collective ownership of the teachers, and what's similar or different in how your school approaches this process.
Well, at Island Lake, we introduced it just right before the beginning of school, and it went over really well. I think the teachers have been really comfortable with us coming into the classroom. They've had all the instruments. They had a copy of this, the analysis, and then this other form too, just so that they knew what we would be looking for. And I think they felt really comfortable.
I think part of it is that we did it beforehand, but then also that as a whole entire district, we're doing a literacy reset, and there's a lot of excitement in the building and kind of district-wide among the elementary teachers to kind of refocus their work, and they're re-energized about literacy. So I think we're sort of riding that wave of momentum. And then I think also that when we presented to staff, we talked about the fact that we don't know everything either, and so we're engaging in literacy training throughout the year, and we've dedicated 4 whole days plus others to improve how we can support them. And I think as kind of being side by side as learners, I think that might have helped them as well.
Yeah, we presented it completely that this is our homework,
our learning,
and it's our learning. So I think it took the onus off of them.
Yes. And they also know that there's support too, so that it's that idea that if we find trends in the data, that we're going to be looking at ways that we can use district supports that we have. We have a literacy coach now in our buildings that we can use. That it's not, it isn't a kind of a gotcha time when we're in the classroom, that it's really about we're going to find those things that we will find and identify the things that are going well, of course, but then we'll also continue to find the ways that people can get better.
Teachers were really positive about it, and I think it was because everybody is involved in it. They weren't nervous or anything. I've been in classrooms. I haven't had anybody ask questions in regard to anything that I did. So it's been very, very positive. I did the same thing. I did it before school started, so they knew it was coming. Explained it as kind of a follow-up to our Literacy Institute, and it was our learning again.
Another part too is at the beginning of the year when we rolled everything out with the PowerPoint and all the handouts and whatnot too, is explain to them that this isn't something that we expect to see on the first day of school.
Right.
And actually we don't expect that this is all going to be in place by the end of the first year, but it's going to be a process. So we're beginning the process now. I think that helped to ease a little bit too, that it's not a sprint, it's more of a longer term project that we're working on.
We have been so used to implementing things so quickly and seeing a quick turnaround. It's also a practice in patience on our end, and I'm looking forward to it. It's like I already start seeing where I want to begin based on some of that initial data collection, but knowing that, boy, it is going to be a very long process, a multi-year process to really get them implementing best practice.
Okay, so I'm going to debrief a little bit on that video. What we see here is a real effort for collective ownership and transparency. This group of principals partnered with their teachers and their literacy coaches to build something together over time. The principals met frequently. They all went through 4 days of workshop training at the Principals Association together with me and also with other districts. A lot of sharing, a lot of reflection, and a lot of solidification in how can we truly create something that's got some longevity and will really make a difference for readers. This is a little snapshot of the progress monitoring enhanced literacy classroom visit that the team did after they provided some professional development around whole group instruction, explicit instruction and modeling, and student engagement. So they took that initial LCV instrument, unpacked those elements into quite a few elements, design training around it, and then went into the classrooms after the teachers had had a few weeks to solidify their knowledge and integrate it into the classroom, and then brought that data back for more discussion and learning. So again, if we're thinking about planning and implementing really strong professional development, we need a data collection system, a framework for guided implementation, and we need to consider that learners learn through a gradual release of responsibility. And if you haven't read the book by Fisher and Fry, there's a link on the website, and it's a great book that helps understand how do you shift the ownership of learning from teachers to students, or from professional developers to teachers. Again, I hope that we met our learning targets, that you have an understanding of the classroom visit model and the professional development framework and how to implement some PD. You do not have to buy the book, but it's helpful. I also put on the website some articles. There's also some data around the different success that districts have had that have truly implemented the process. So if you would like to reach me, this is my information, and I would love to respond to you in the chat. So please stay on this experience, and I will enter in chat information. If you feel like you have deeper questions, feel free to email me at houckreads, and it's my last name, HOUCKREADZ, @gmail.com. And you also could access my information through the website. I appreciate your time, and I hope that you will find this an asset to your work. And please email me and let me know how it's going.